Good morning, everyone, and welcome, Barry, back to Coffee with a Purpose. Thanks again for joining us. As a reminder to folks, Barry joined us, I think it was fall of 2022, to talk about this climate, MetroWest climate equity project. Although for some reason I thought it had a different name back then, but maybe not. Maybe and Barry's from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. So we'd love to get an update on that project, and honestly, anything else that you're interested in discussing with us this morning, Barry. I think why don't we, since it's been a while since you've been with us, why don't we use our usual protocol of we'll just do brief introduction so you know who else is in the virtual room here. So I see Kathleen in my upper left corner.
Good morning, Barry. Great to see you. Great to meet you. I wasn't part of Coffee with a Purpose for your last presentation, so looking forward to learning on this one. I'm a 33-year resident of Natick. I'm on the library's board of trustees, and I volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful.
Thanks, Kathleen. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. Doug and I have been here like 40 years, which seems unbelievable. I am a retired hydrogeologist, worked in cleaning up hazardous waste sites. So environmental justice more broadly is a topic that has been of interest to me for a long time. So because, the hazardous waste sites very much land more in poorer neighborhoods than wealthy ones. So
Great.
Anyway, looking forward to it.
Thanks. Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill Ramage. I am a trail steward at Pagan Cove. I work with Keep Natick Beautiful and Eco Natick, all environmental areas that interest me, as do other things, and interested in hearing what you have to say. Welcome.
Thanks, Bill. Carrie?
Morning, Barry. Yeah, kind of joining the whole symphony here. Yeah, along with Bill's help and many others, I helped start Renewable Natick many years ago, which in 8 short months went from our kickoff meeting to drafting a resolution, which town meeting passed in October 2018, sort of paving the way for the work that Jillian and the Sustainability Committee is doing right now. Treasurer for Keep Natick Beautiful, and what else? Oh, the Repair Cafe. I'm kind of organizing our 4th one coming up the weekend of Earth Day all around Natick, April 27th, from 2:30 to 5:30. If you have any broken lamps or other things that need repair, with textures to come there and do it for free. So
Great.
Thanks, Carrie.
Remember.
Elaine?
Elaine, I'm relatively new to Natick, longtime advocate for disability rights, mother of grown children and grandchildren, known as Bubby Elaine to the children, and looking forward to this conversation, as I do every Monday morning.
Thanks, Elaine. Tom? Just got to come off of mute there, Tom. Tom, you're on mute. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi there, Barry. I haven't seen you for a while. I was a member of the initial task force that gathered some of the data a couple of years ago, and glad to see Barry again. And as he knows, I'm a member of Natick for Black Lives Matter, and town meeting member, and member of Spark, and anxious to hear what any updates you have. So welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Martin?
Yeah, I'm over here at MetroWorks. I'm the only one here today. I don't know where everybody is, but next week is the first meeting of the month, so we should have food here, so maybe entice more people to come here. And anybody who wants to volunteer can volunteer to bring. Anyway, I am for 25 years, I guess, been on town meeting and almost that length of time chair of the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Martin. Cindy?
Good morning. I'm a four-year resident of Natick. I am steward of the Takawambe Trail, and I help at Coolidge Field with litter. And That's it.
Thanks, Cindy. And then our video off people, Brindley.
Good morning. I'm lifelong environmentalist, quite literally. I was the kid who made everybody on the street recycle straight out of high school, when you had to drive all your stuff to the center because there wasn't such a thing as curbside and sort everything. I was on the recycling committee way back when it was a recycling committee. Now it's gone through to sustainability and now to net zero. I was on the Pay As You Throw task force. I'm a huge composting advocate. And I'm grateful for all you do and glad you're here.
Great.
Thanks. And Carol.
Yeah, good morning. I'm a town meeting member. I've lived in Natick for over 50 years, and I was a special ed teacher for 30 years in the town of Framingham, where I had a lot of kids from the area that you're going to be maybe focusing on today. So thank you for coming. Want to hear.
Thanks, Carol. And Jillian.
Hey Barry, Jillian Wilson Martin here. I'm the Director of Sustainability. I think I know everyone on this call, but I'm always so happy to talk to you, and just hearing about all of the wonderful things that you guys are doing in our community really just makes me feel good. So thanks for being here and for hosting Barry, and I'm excited for him to share the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Jillian. And Rick, I see, is also. Rick may be away from his phone. He's got his video off at the moment, so we can go ahead and start. So Barry, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks again.
Thanks to be here. On a little bit of a lighter note too, we had a photo from this work that we were doing where I had a red polo shirt on, and then Jillian and I had a chance to present, and that photo was in the slides we were presenting. And I was also wearing the red polo shirt. So it looked like it was the only thing I was wearing whenever I was in some type of public setting. So I'm actually happy right now. So Jillian at least see me wearing at least a slightly different appearance in this part of it too. So thanks everyone again for the chance to be here. Maybe picking up on a theme, I think Kathleen, that you were talking about at the beginning was like this idea of how do we connect with and communicate and make people aware of either kind of resources, changes that are happening, opportunities that are present in different kind of cities and towns and the communities that make up those cities and towns. And a lot of the project for the MetroWest Climate Equity Project, and I want to really give credit to Jillian for her kind of instigation of this through a state grant. And then Deb Mitchell was the one who invited us to this conversation. Again, again, thank you all for the invitation. But as part of the project was thinking about, for a variety of reasons, there are parts of our cities and towns, communities within that city and town who aren't always kind of included in the processes that go on. And that can be for a variety of reasons of whether someone didn't access it, wasn't able to see it because of the language that it came in, or the life that they have, they're not able to participate at a certain time of the day, or they may not see sometimes the relevance of that particular issue to their lives. And so the MetroWest Climate Equity Project was an opportunity to reach out to some communities within Ashland, Framingham, and Natick, where folks might live in neighborhoods where they may not necessarily be the ones that are always reached by some of these processes and resources, and essentially kind of have a perspective and a strength that they can add to the communities that they're part of that maybe aren't always being unlocked, and essentially maybe some barriers sit between that too. And so we went through a process, and Tom was part of this, as he alluded to, where we recruited around 10 folks who we called community climate liaisons. And we worked with them really closely across the 3 towns. These are residents of either the neighborhoods that met the environmental justice criteria, or really had an interest and did work in those neighborhoods. And we worked with those folks to go through a process saying, how do we connect with your neighbors? How do we connect with folks in your community? Can you guide us to do that? And so we went through a process where they helped us develop a survey, both do the outreach for the survey. I think one of the high points of that process was that in the end, the responses that we got were actually very reflective of the demographic profiles across the cities and across the city and the towns. And if you're familiar with some community survey efforts, often you get overrepresentation between like a particular age group or a particular racial or other identity. In this case, it both in terms of, I think, age, with the exception of under 18, but of age and in terms of like race and ethnicity, it was very reflective of the municipalities itself. And the people of color who came in a lot through that process noted community liaisons as being the one that actually brought them into that process. So it was really, what that then led us to was a series of kind of observations and findings from that process, but we still needed a little bit more detail to understand that. And so the liaisons, what they did in the next round was hosted conversations within their homes to ask folks to say, this is what it seems like the surveys are saying. Like, what do you make of this? What do you think it means in terms of action? What do you think it means for the type of work we should be doing? Do you have the ability to screen share?
Yeah, you should. Yep.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna share, and I'll send this link out afterwards, but this just is a link to the MetroWest Climate Equity website as MAPC hosts it. And we ended up essentially through the liaisons and with the liaisons identifying 4 areas that folks really highlighted as they felt was important. One was around emergency preparedness. And so feeling of like, what are our cities and towns doing? Where can we turn? What information should be aware of? Issues around energy efficiency and clean energy. And often this had a lot to like, how do people access programs? How do they do that in a way that they know it can be trusted? Some folks had some kind of really rough experiences with that, but then other folks are figuring out like, how do you kind of navigate some of those systems? Another interest was providing more opportunities to get around without a car, reflecting both folks who were in situations where they didn't have access to a personal vehicle, but also folks who are really trying to say, take that step to say, essentially, if we're doing less vehicle trips, carbon-based fuel trips, and we're doing more walking, biking, and potentially traveling by transit, how do we kind of make that happen? And then one, I think that's becoming more and more pressing is access essentially to kind of abilities to cool off in the summer, particularly whether it be like a natural body of water, whether it be a pool, whether it be a splash pad, where is that access and how people can get access to that particular part of it too. We then built on that work. And this again is really credit to your town, to Ashland, to Framingham, to begin to focus on this issue of emergency preparedness. It reflected both an interest level and, to be frank, given the resources we had, it was the most kind of efficient way to get at some of this work so we maintain momentum around that particular work too. And so what we were able to do was able to get a grant. We actually got a grant from a national organization to do work around this. And again, working with a set of liaisons who connected with their neighbors, who had conversations around this. We heard from folks essentially what they were looking for. And I think it really came down to 3 things. One was them receiving direct alerts from the cities or from the city or towns about the work too. And that took the case of a mailing. People were really interested in this idea of having something that was kind of permanent that they could hold on to. So this idea of a magnet was something that people brought up again and again, of being able to turn to something. And so like often I think there's a default immediately to doing a lot of digital stuff, but folks wanted a lot of like hard copy things that were physical that they could hold on to, and was the availability of this information in multiple languages, which again, for lots of reasons, that was not the case at the moment. A lot of things were just available in English. And so across the 3 municipalities, we developed flyers, we developed magnets, again, design these with the liaisons. Actually, one liaison itself actually did all the design for the work. And so they actually led that work. I should be clear too, the liaisons we're talking about were all essentially compensated positions as well too. So when we're asking time from people, they were being compensated for their time. It wasn't just essentially say volunteer and do this. It was saying we're asking kind of a value and asset you're bringing from the community as a resident to this work. And one of the things I think that was really exciting about all this is what it actually did. And again, credit to Jillian and staff like her and the other municipalities. They interacted with their police chiefs, their emergency management chiefs, people from the fire department, to really have conversations to say, like, what is the state of the information on our website? And what may not surprise you is that it wasn't always getting updated. It wasn't always the most relevant information. And so what ended up happening was the 3 websites, I think, and Jillian could correct me, but like it went to a ready Natick framing within Natick. And so the whole website was essentially kind of fixed and reordered and essentially made very easy to access in other languages. So the shortcut is Google Translate. Not ideal, but it actually brings all the information much more closer and accessible to folks too. And so all those things didn't really exist in a user-friendly way or in up-to-date information. And so in some ways, in doing this work, the entire town, the entire city benefited from this work, even though it was very focused on a particular kind of area and particular set of people with certain backgrounds within the city and towns themselves too. Last thing I'll add is that we then moved into a part of the process where, and this is really great, where we then tried to move into the winter emergency communication. So the previous communications were really focused on dealing with like high heat, dealing with issues in the summer, and folks really wanted to do a winter part of the work as well too. And so we moved into that, and that's currently underway right now with a set of about, I think, 6 liaisons, 7 liaisons, again, across the 3 municipalities. And one of our liaisons developed some social media stuff, particularly aimed at the Brazilian Portuguese speaking population in the area. As she began to post it, it got picked up by a Brazilian language or Brazilian Portuguese language media station, who then began to promote it through all of that too. And just to see her excitement for seeing this creation kind of move further out and really serve the community she was in. And then I think I have this one too from the text back and forth too. It was even getting shared as far as Florida. It just as an idea of like the resources and the reach that it could have. And again, this is all credit to her and where she's taken that work that she's doing. And then the very last thing is, because again, we're trying to think about the way different populations experience the process. We now have the ability essentially to do some similar work, particularly focus on older adults of color. We were able to get a grant through an organization called Age Span. It was a DEI grant, again, focused on kind of connections. And so we're using that now to begin to do some outreach in that particular part of the work too. And so we've understood the experience, whether it's coping, awareness, action from folks who are in those neighborhoods broadly. But now we're trying to think more about essentially kind of populations of color, particularly older populations of color, and how their experiences might be the same or different as what has been collected or kind of shared in other processes. So I will stop there. I want to pause and just, now that I see Jillian, just invite her in just to see if there's anything else that I may have missed, anything she would like to add to that as well too.
Once she finds her mute switch there. Jillian, did you want to add to anything, Barry? There
I
you
was trying, I was trying to find my mute switch. I've had all these technical difficulties this morning. No, I think I was listening, and I think you did a great job summarizing it. I guess what I would add is, in addition to that work, what's been really exciting is that it's been kind of slowly, but like surely, like trickling into other work that we're doing. So we're trying to take this liaison model into other projects that we are working on as a community. So for example, with the development of the parks along the Charles River, we have special funding through our grants to hire, which we've already done for Native American representatives, but we have funding for tribal community liaisons. And then we also have funding for community liaisons from Natick that are representing environmental justice communities. So people, and it's been interesting in that area because those people, the area of South Natick that the parks are in is not an environmental justice neighborhood. So already people who, the people who are living in environmental justice neighborhoods in Natick are typically like not going to those parks. And in speaking with some of them, they don't necessarily feel like it's a place for them. So how do we design a park that they can feel like they're welcome at? And we are also talking with our head of diversity, equity, outreach, and inclusion, Troy. And we have been talking about ways that we can bring town services to different parts of the community. We have this idea that we're calling town hall in your neighborhood, which I don't want to spoil because it's his baby. But maybe he'll come and talk to you about it later. But in general, the idea is that we could do almost like town hall pop-ups in different parts of Natick that maybe don't feel comfortable coming to town hall, but could use some of the services here, including like library cards and things like that. And just going through this process as a town employee has kind of changed my perspective on a lot of the work that I do to make sure it's more inclusive, and to also try to push other departments to make sure they're making that extra effort to invite people to their meetings. So even like recently we had a West Natick like planning meeting about the future of West Natick and the 135 corridor, and really working to make sure that the folks running those meetings like made extra effort to include the West Natick condo community that's over there, which is precinct 1, and it's where most we have like a lot of unengaged voters in that area who don't participate in town meeting and are really underrepresented and are typically not at public meetings. So trying to like go to those complexes, like talk to the property managers, partner with them to get the word out, just really doing more to include people who are typically not involved in the process, and not just assume that their lack of presence at our meetings means they're not interested, but to go the extra mile to make sure that it's possible for them to participate.
That's really good. Does that include kind of considering different times to hold public events? Is that any part of the key to lack of participation, is that they're just not available at the time meetings are happening? Or?
Yeah, that's something we've thought about, and we when we do these community liaison projects, we meet with the residents who participate in the evening. So it's not like a during the day meeting, but I think what we found is that the residents that are not participating, maybe they have a lot of other commitments on their time, right? Or they're not working the similar, 9 to 5 jobs. So even having a meeting at night isn't always like the best way. And so even with our community liaison projects, we have pivoted, instead of relying completely on everyone being able to get together at the same time, providing like homework or like one-on-one opportunities. And Barry's team has really done the bulk of the work on this, but even communicating with them through different channels. So instead of like emailing, they are texting through like WhatsApp and things like that, really meeting people where they are and using technology and plain language that they're comfortable with. So one of the things that we're doing soon, and you might have mentioned this, Barry, and I might not have heard you because I was trying to get myself set up here, but we're starting a new round of work with older adults around climate and specifically around heat. And so with that work, we're doing recruitment with the Community Senior Center, but we'll also be going through this process together where we get all on the same page about what climate is, instead of us like talking to people like we're the experts, like making sure we're all on a level playing field about the topic, and then working together to think about solutions.
That sounds fantastic. Sarah,
I just wanted to say, so I went to that meeting, and I thought it was really interesting the way they were soliciting feedback. It was very hands-on, and I thought it was interesting. And I did get into a couple conversations with sort of during the point when I guess it would be the Q&A period, although it really wasn't exactly what it was, but and there were people who I think lived in some of those areas that, I didn't get exactly where they were living, but that did show up for that meeting. And it was interesting, to talk to people that, this may have been one of their first engagements kind of in this public process. And, there was this level of surprise of like, it's all this stuff going on that, trying to connect this person with, here's some things you could do to find out more and so forth. So I thought that was a really interesting meeting. And I do recall that it was on the night of a tremendous one, hard to pick which one because we've had so many, but a big wind and rainstorm. And I wonder if that may have held the turnout down a bit. But anyway, I thought it was a really interesting meeting.
Are you saying for the park meeting that we had about the dam?
No, I'm talking about the one that was at Kennedy about 135.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Barry, you were looking to.
Yeah, and I was going to thank you again. And I was going to pick up that one thing Jillian said too. Like, I think one of the things that like the one-on-one contact has felt really, really important because one, I think there's things I know I'll speak only for myself that I just take for granted in terms of like how processes work or how things go or who's involved. And a little bit to your point, Sarah, is like some folks that isn't familiar to them. And so sometimes we will have like a public meeting and we just expect, shouldn't say I'll speak for myself. I might just expect that someone will show up at that meeting and just know how like the meeting's going to run and why we're participating and how their input will be like. And a lot of people we've found have not done that, and particularly people who may be more recent arrivals to the US. And so that one-on-one contact can also be really, really helpful to say both before a meeting and after meeting, like this is what's going to happen. This is what happened. Do you have like, and be able to navigate some of those things because when that person then comes back, their civic engagement just feels that much stronger because they see those things, they understand how the systems work, and it feels like that empowerment as a resident is just as powerful as just going through the process itself too. And so that part feels really strong. So thank you for noting that, Jillian, and thanks for that observation, Sarah.
Yeah. So how does that one-on-one work? Are you talking about at a physical meeting, or are there other avenues where that also happens? And how do you find who the one is that you're gonna?
So the one-on-one would be like whoever the liaisons turn out to be. And so again, credit to Sharon and Claire and Sarai and Jeanette, who have all done a lot of this work more than I have. But each of them would essentially kind of like find a time to talk on the phone, maybe do some texting in between, maybe an email, if possible, actually come out and meet with the person for a coffee or lunch, but just do that kind of part of it that gets the process, but also in the end, some really nice things have happened in terms of the relationships. We've been asked in some cases to say like, hey, I'm having trouble. I need to get to the airport. Could you potentially help me with some travel just to like help them navigate systems? Wow. And we've actually had some other folks too, who might be going through like a citizenship process. And they're like, hey, is there any chance you might actually be able to kind of talk to someone or be able like, not in a way to kind of use us, but as someone who has a relationship with them to have kind of a way to kind of be, I wouldn't say so like a friend, but be closer to someone who essentially kind of, personally, not just because of the public process itself too. So the relationships flourish in addition to the work itself.
That sounds fantastic. Wow.
Barry, I think what you call it is word of mouth.
Say that again, Tom.
Word of mouth. In other words,
word of mouth.
You help somebody, and then that person tells somebody else. That person tells somebody else, and then it kind of spreads that way.
I think you're absolutely right. And then we've seen that particularly around some of the clean energy pieces where folks have had the like individual experience, but then in making the contact with someone like Jillian or sustainability coordinator, they've then learned the next part of that process. And then they're part of a community with either their family or neighbors. I think we've seen that happen just as much. Yeah, it's a really good point.
So I can't remember whether it was you, Barry, or Jillian that talked about the climate justice neighborhoods and how the area around, say, the South Natick Dam is not one of those neighborhoods. How do those neighborhoods get established or I mean defined, delineated?
Yeah, it's a really good question too. So I think Sarah, it may have been your observation earlier too, is that traditionally in the past, environmental justice was identified as places where there was like an overrepresentation of environmental hazardous materials. Probably not surprising to any of us, or production, probably not surprising to any of us. That was often done in places where you had lower income households, people of color, people who did not speak English well, or English was not their first language. That was often quite a strong kind of overlap where those things are. And so in the case of Massachusetts, we actually define it that way. So census blocks where more than, I think, 25% of the population would meet the characteristics of a household with a low income, places where you have a higher proportion of people of color, and places where you have a higher proportion of folks who have linguistic isolation or don't speak English as their first language. Those are the areas that are lifted up in Massachusetts as environmental justice neighborhoods. And interestingly, like there's places where only one of those exists, but there's also places where like all three of those categories are met. And so environmental justice is inclusive of all those categories.
So is there like a map for Natick that shows where those are? And where do you see that?
So
I think Jillian was good jumping.
Yeah, in Natick, most of our environmental justice neighborhoods are defined based on density of minority populations living there. So like more minorities are living in those census blocks than, like, a higher percentage of minorities are living in those census blocks than other parts of town. But then income is a key factor in at least 2 of the environmental justice census blocks, and then also English language isolation. So I can't, because I'm using my phone, so I can't like easily share my screen or anything. But there's the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. They have a map, and you just Google Massachusetts environmental justice populations. There's a map viewer. They call it an EJ map viewer. And in Natick, a lot of the neighborhoods are in West Natick, so precincts 1 and 2. So again, that like condo and apartment community near the West Natick train station. And then also the neighborhood near Cedar Gardens at Natick Center. And then also along Route 9 or along Queen Street near Home Depot, where there's that like large apartment complex. I think it's called Modera, or and then also near Navy Yard. And that area, there's kind of a pretty big mix of commercial and residential. And growing up in Natick, I see a lot of, I can see like how that Natick over time has increased in terms of like being a much more expensive place to live, right? And the 30 years or so that I've lived in Natick. But even thinking back to like when I was a teenager and visiting friends in different parts of Natick, like those neighborhoods are typically where there's more rental than like single family homes and apartment buildings. And having those focus areas like top of mind for us as a local government is really helpful, because another thing that I think some people on this call were involved with is the Heat Watch project that we did with the McCullough Center in Framingham. I see Sarah nodding. I think, Bill, you might have been on the news about it. So on this Friday at Framingham State, we have an event where we're going to unveil the results and thank all the volunteers. But if you look at that map, you'll see that the places where it's hottest in Natick on a hot day are in those same neighborhoods, because those neighborhoods often are more paved. They are typically have less trees. And so taking that one step further, I was just actually emailing about the Planting the Future program that we have, where we're working to get trees in areas of Natick that have higher temperatures. And last year we struggled to get lots of people who were in those heat islands. Thanks, Martin, for sharing the map. So you can see the different places. The color coding is based on what criteria is designating it as an environmental justice neighborhood. So the 2 that are in green, those are the ones where income, I think, is the defining factor. And then the pink one, I believe, is the language isolation. And you can see that like Natick, the places in Natick where it's environmental justice, most of them are on the west side of Natick, and that's like leading into Framingham. So, and then from Framingham, it kind of leads into Ashland. So there's kind of a cluster. And that's one of the reasons that I really like working with other communities, especially Framingham, is because we're all dealing with the same issues. And if you live in Natick, you're going to be visiting Framingham or our friends in Framingham, and vice versa. So it just makes sense that we're working together as a region to try to support people facing similar challenges.
It's fantastic. And just to link things together, what Martin is showing is the links that Barry had put in the chat, which I'll also include in the follow-up email as well. Welcome to a couple more folks that have joined the conversation. This is great. Barry, you had also mentioned, I guess in the earlier stages of the project, producing magnets and flyers. So where are those resources housed these days? How do you get it back?
So that's a good question. So I mean, that is something we can work on. We had we tried to make the most. We got the grant that we had to support that was about $20,000. So between like printing, magnets, engagement, liaison, like we had to kind of really maximize all that too. And so we took a really targeted approach for the first part of it to reach out to those neighborhoods. So really there was a targeted mailing to each of those environmental justice neighborhoods too. And Jillian might remember better than I do, but I think in Natick it was English, Spanish, I think Brazilian Portuguese and Russian.
Yeah, Russian. Yeah.
And
And
Russian.
then in Framingham, they added Haitian Creole, I believe. And yeah, so unfortunately we don't have like extra magnets because we gave them all away to the people who need them. But what's also been kind of cool about that project, so that project we did through this health foundation that received funds from the CDC, and we wrote like a blog post for their website about it, and we've heard back from people, and it was the title of the blog post was "Who are you gonna call when you don't speak English?" And it had this like little ghost, and it was kind of fun. And we've heard back from people, like different health officials in different parts of the country, who have been kind of inspired by it and are working to adjust their emergency preparedness materials to really focus on supporting people who don't speak English as their first language. So like some of the things that we've done to our website is really try to make it much more visual, and cut down on text, because previously the websites were just almost like novels about emergency preparedness and listing every possible thing. And while that's super valuable, that's really hard if you don't speak English, and it kind of is just like a turn off to just go to a website with just like, a book. So we tried to make it easier to navigate and not lose any of that information, but really be thoughtful about how many words we use to say something. So, and when we can use visuals to really get the main point across.
And I would just build on that real quick too, to say like, hopefully you all can see the advantage of that too, of just what it actually does for the English as well. If you don't have to spend hours reading it, you can get to it quickly. So it's like one of these things when the change happens, it's just emblematic of like how we can all benefit as like kind of as a population, as a community in ways, while also being inclusive of folks who may not have that kind of accessibility to it as well too. And so really good points, Jillian. Thanks for highlighting those.
Barry, I'm here. Deb.
Hey, Deb.
Yeah, I'm a climate liaison. I just go for the food, you know that, right?
You do a lot more than that.
I'm coming for the dinner in February.
Yeah, we'll be getting together again next Wednesday as a group to kind of finalize some of the winter communications piece too. In this case, each of the liaisons led a different project. So rather than just like working on one flyer or one magnet, the example you saw from the Brazilian Portuguese post was one example of it. But we have some other folks that are developing materials that are going out through WhatsApp communities, that are going out through Nextdoor. I think some that are going through social media, some doing essentially graphics. And actually we have one person who's trying to create like a instructional video as part of it to share with essentially populations that she knows and kind of folks that she knows via social media too. So we should have some really exciting examples in the next kind of month or so in case you want some follow-up.
Well, Cindy, I see you've got your hand up too.
Yeah, so this all sounds really wonderful, especially just thinking about the impact of having, people reaching out one-on-one to folks who may not be aware of how things work. And while it's just about, ostensibly this climate issues, it's really everything, right? But I'm curious, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I was thinking, okay, there's not interested, there's no time, and there's not knowing, and maybe there's others, but can you, having done all this work and reaching out to folks to understand what the issues were about people not participating, is there a way that you can sort of say, well, it's about this percent, the issue was XYZ, X or Y or Z, I guess is my question.
I would probably say not knowing, and in the sense of not knowing doesn't reflect lack of curiosity or
Oh,
interest.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, it's often, we've seen it much more in the sense of like, there's probably unintended barriers that are up in a lot of ways. And I think in a little bit to your point of the one-on-one has been finding ways to kind of identify them and kind of either move them out of the way or just remove them completely. And so I'd be curious what Jillian and Deb think as well too, maybe Tom as well, but I think it's often been much more than not knowing, because when we've created the pathways, we've seen a lot of kind of flow in like really good civic directions and folks who again really feel like they are residents and want to engage in the way that they can best as a resident of that particular place. I don't know, Jillian or Deb, if you feel different. Thank you for the question, Cindy.
I'll let Deb answer first. You have that, Deb. It's okay, we don't.
Here she is.
Yeah. Deb, you're on mute, Deb. You need to come
Oh,
off.
hi, Julian. Where
Yeah.
am I?
Yep.
Julian?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi. Okay. Did you ever make that giant? You was gonna make a giant something. Remember you was for
Oh yeah, the French toast thing. Yeah, I never did
Did you ever
that.
for that.
I should do that.
I feel that I love the climate change liaison because I'm not an influencer, but they said I was an influencer. So what I did, my part was my assignment was to post everything on Facebook that we talked about and emailing, remember? And I did that. I don't know if anybody from this crew committee got any of my Facebook posts on that. Doug, do you remember getting that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't think I saw them, but who knows? I don't understand how Facebook decides.
Well, anyway,
Oh,
an email. Did you get an email on the climate change stuff from me? No?
No.
All right, I can try to find it and I'll send it.
Mhm.
And by the way, that make me look very important. I was like, I'm a climate change liaison from Natick, and here's what you need to do. And so we had all the emergency things to take care of and everything. And so I'm a senior citizen. I live alone. My family, I have the family down the Cape and all over. But they called me. They said, Deb, the storm's coming. Make sure I'm all ahead of you. I'm a climate change liaison. And I was.
I like how you say liaison.
Listen. Justice, what do you call it? What do you call it? The justice community? What are we, the justice communities? We need that because, especially seniors. I consider senior citizens people in that category because seniors, we need a little extra help sometime.
Yeah,
and I didn't put my blanket in the car, but I did have, I did get one of those things to brush. I went out today and there was some snow on the ground. I was like, oh my God, I went to get my coffee. So anyway, I had been really sick. I was coughing and hacking and I couldn't breathe. I was getting ready to say, Elizabeth, here I come. Remember Fred Sanford? Hey, Elizabeth. Remember, I was sick. And so today is the first day that I could actually breathe.
Yay.
And so one of the things that I did, because I'm a librarian, I research everything. I got a new book, plug, coming out today. One of the things I did was I like AI, Google. I like AI because you got that app. What's it called? CWAP. You could just ask them questions.
Yep.
Because Alexis is too slow. AI will tell you everything. They give you the whole deal. I was like, AI, I can't breathe. Could you help? Well, how do you help with breathing? And so they said, turn the fan on or open the windows. But what I've done, I live in the Avalon, Natick. Kind of swanky, but it's very expensive. So I'm looking for other options as well. But anyway, they said, turn the fan on, Sarah, or open the window. And believe me, I had closed all my windows because I was cold in my house. And then AI told me, said, no, turn the fan on or open the window so you can breathe. I have asthma. My asthma came back and I don't know, all these different viruses are going around. And I got the RSV virus injection. I just got that.
Yeah.
But Barry, I forget what you was asking me to tell them. I got the magnet. Did I get the magnet? I was supposed to make a copy of the I got all the information but I don't know if I have an actual magnet. Did you make magnets, or are we supposed to make our own magnets? Because I can make my magnet if you want me to.
Look, I think you should have been on the mailing list, but we'll go back and double check that part of it too, just that part.
Yeah,
I
because
think you kind of answered it there, which at least from our experience with you, it's that ability to kind of inform people and talk to them directly. I think to the question that was asked, it was that they didn't know as opposed to like not interested or didn't want to participate, I think is what I think you've reflected back to us in the past.
yeah. People are very interested in the climate change. I came late, so I don't know, Barry, what you presented. So I'm just giving my perspective as a climate liaison. We also have someone here named Sherelle, who I invited, but she works. She's with Black Lives Matter. She works too. She couldn't come today, but she'll get the recording. Okay, I'm going to be quiet. Only thing I like about the Fred Sanford, because now all the shows are on Tubi. They got this Tubi. They got Fred Sanford. That's My Mama. They got all the old shows. So I'm watching In the Heat of the Night marathon.
Well, it's good to see your face, Deb.
Oh my
I'm glad you're
goodness.
breathing a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll wait for my turn. I'm speaking on the 5th with Donna. I'll wait for my turn.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Jillian, we'll stay on. Jillian, did you want to add anything else to that topic that Barry was talking about, or in response to Cindy's question, I guess?
Yeah, I was going to add that I feel like a barrier that I've heard about from people, and I don't know if I could say like what percent of people is the real reason is that they don't participate, but it feels like you need to be an expert on something, or that you don't necessarily feel comfortable in like a space like town meeting where it feels like everyone really understands this like decorum of like local government and all these like processes, and even just the name town meeting in itself is like a misnomer, because I've had people say like, oh, like, you know, I'm going to go to the one meeting, like town meeting, singular, and it's a different kind of world than I think people are maybe used to. And then I would also say like even just going to like a public meeting or like speaking at a podium is really uncomfortable for a lot of people, even people who like feel like they belong in those spaces. And so just providing ways for people to participate without it having to feel like so high pressure, or that you're, you know, doing like a school assignment or something like that. I think that makes government more welcoming to others.
Jillian, I'm going to throw out an idea that isn't directly on the topic of the environmental justice campaign, but more broadly. I know Brinley and I have talked about this a lot, about how do we encourage more participation from some of these same neighborhoods we're talking about. And, you know, I've sort of thought about the idea of having either, you know, some of us who have been on town meeting for a long time be willing to be like a town meeting mentor, or, you know, go ahead of time and just have a little presentation, town meeting 101, to just kind of explain the process. And I think there are some of us who are long-term town meeting members who would be down for doing this if, you know, more broadly, people think that would be interesting or helpful. So I'll just leave that there, let the group ponder that. But you know, it has been an issue for a long time, and people have been kind of scratching their heads trying to figure out appropriate ways to address it. And I feel like there could be some overlap between the methods that have been used in this particular campaign and the same kind of barriers and issues of town meeting being kind of intimidating. I mean, honestly, for me, who is a, you know, well-educated English-speaking white woman, it was intimidating for me in the beginning. So, you know, I just throw that out there, and we don't need to discuss that now, but anyway.
No, but I love that idea, and we don't have to discuss that idea in specific, but I want to like point out that Barry is part of the health team at MAPC. He's not like on their climate and clean energy team, right? So the work that we're doing is climate is really part of everything, because it's changing all aspects of our lives in terms of, you know, the kind of food we'll be able to get in the future, what like is happening with flooding and storm drains, to heat, to like different, infectious diseases and things like that. So I really see this as being a way that our community can connect in a better and more inclusive way. And even with the Health and Human Resources study that's happening, that the Community Senior Center is leading, and even some of the work through the library, like when we did these outdoor reading rooms last year, I was working with the library on that, and we purposely didn't have all of the outdoor reading rooms at library locations. Like we had talked about having one by the Bacon Free Library in South Natick and here at the Moore Substitute Library, but we purposely chose to locate them in areas where we tried to locate them in more environmental justice neighborhoods. So we did the Cole Center, which was the closest public property near the West Natick environmental justice zone. And then we chose to do one at the East School or the Connor Heffler Park because we were wanting to reach people who don't usually participate in local government, and who we looked at where are their lower membership levels in terms of people who have library cards. So really making sure that we're not always just doing things in Natick Center and also talking to the same people. And so we're trying to use this effort to improve our understanding of needs of disadvantaged population throughout the community as it relates to climate, but also take that and apply it to everything, which is kind of where that town hall in your neighborhood idea came from, because we have this energy advocate position, and her and I were trying to think of ways we could reach people about energy. And it felt kind of inauthentic to just go and only be talking to them about their energy bills, when there's all these other challenges that they have with just being engaged with the town. So how we'll be stronger on climate if we are more connected as a community. And so we're trying to build that up and use this as a way to infuse that thinking throughout all of our government processes and systems. So it's a journey, but people seem pretty excited about it. So I'm excited about it too.
Yeah, that is exciting to hear that approach to it. Let's see, who else has got questions? I know I have a couple others myself, but both Deb and Barry had mentioned an event coming up next week. I guess just as a segue, so what's currently going on with the project? Are the liaisons still doing work? Are there new things that did the grant run out and you can't do anything now, or what's next?
Yeah, there's so next Wednesday is a meeting for the liaisons, for the six or seven liaisons that are engaged right now too. And where in the summer the emergency preparedness or emergency response campaign was much more kind of the mailing and the magnets, everybody contributing to a single thing that was done across all three municipalities. So it was a very consistent message, a little bit to Jillian's point of understanding kind of community and relationships across those municipal borders. That's what happened in the summer, but in the winter, we've continued to move with kind of the emergency preparedness communication side of it too. And a little bit to your point, Doug, is because our resources dropped for the moment. And it was kind of a lower threshold, lower resource way to do that work. And so that is essentially having each of those liaisons is running essentially an independent project using essentially kind of municipal and emergency resources about winter communications for folks to understand that too. And maybe even Sarah, maybe you've been mentioned it as well too, weather plays into this too, right? And so we're feeling like it's really good messaging right now, given kind of the variability we're seeing, both the cold and the precipitation and the kind of changes in that. So that's happening right now. So we'll be finishing that out. And then the thing that's right on the tail of that is that focus on kind of older adults and older adults of color as part of the kind of continuing that liaison model. So a little bit to Deb's point of really kind of connecting with a group that's been part of the mix, but kind of focusing on more specifically for that. And that's happening across all three municipalities as well.
Are
You
you
also, and Barry, you didn't know about this yet. We just applied to MAPC, actually, to someone else in your organization, to get support with a bike and pedestrian plan for the community. We don't have confirmation if we're getting it or not, but we were able, because of the work through the MetroWest Climate Equity Project, to get another department to allocate some funding to support a liaison process as part of that project if we get that assistance. So if we get technical assistance from MAPC to develop a bike and pedestrian plan, we have additional funds that we can use to make sure we're doing that extra lift of outreach to people who don't usually participate to get their feedback, which to me is especially important for bike and pedestrian planning because often the environmental justice communities are the ones who have lower like ownership of cars and things like that. And it was one of the things we heard about as a priority through that project that they wanted us to work on transportation. So it's cool because it's just kind of infiltrating other projects and departments, which is exactly what we wanted to happen.
Yeah. Tom, you had your hand up? Just got to come off mute there.
I haven't heard mention of a focus on disabled people. Is there going to be any action on that?
Yeah, Tom, I want to speak to that point. Is that okay, Doug?
Yeah, sure.
I'm also part of the disabled community, and Tom also he was the liaison with the Native Black Lives Matter. He's the vice president, so Tom has experience in that. It was very helpful. And one of the things that Tom sort of prompted me to say that I'm a part of Employment Options, which is a clubhouse in Marlborough. I think we can get them to come on to talk to you guys at some point because they do have disabled people from Natick that go to this clubhouse. We want to increase visibility, and what they do there is like a day treatment for people who have mental illness, but you have to be 18 or up. They have computers, they have jobs and lunch. And actually I'm going to be trying to get there for lunch at 12. But Claire and I think Barry, Julie, remember Claire, who is a liaison or part of the team, she and I went and did a focus group there with the people in the clubhouse. And it's amazing to me, we kind of overlooked that community, but these folks just have a lot of information and insight into what they need in terms of the community, what they need in terms of crossing is, different things. And so we had a whole bunch of stuff from them. So that answers that question, Tom, a little bit.
Thanks.
Okay,
And Jillian or Barry, do you want to add anything more to Tom's topic of reaching out to disabled communities?
Well, I would say that it's part of what we're trying to do with the older adult liaisons for the upcoming kind of scope of work that we have. And I would say that, in Native, we have the Commission for on Disabilities, and maybe Ms. Ostroff could share more about some of this work since she's been such an advocate in this space. But like, for example, with the park planning process for the new parks along the Charles River, and even in the decision about removing the dam on the Charles River Advisory Committee, we purposefully included a representative from the Disability Commission. So I think, I guess it's great feedback. I'm not as involved in those areas of work for the town, but bringing that up, Tom, makes me think that we should make sure that that voice is definitely heard on the bike and pedestrian planning process too. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks. I just want to circle back to Barry since he has to drop off in just a couple minutes. Barry, do you have any other closing comments or thoughts or questions or assignments for us?
Thank you. Just really, again, the appreciation for the space to be here too. I think thinking about Tom's comment too, I think often folks we're interacting with kind of live in a bunch of different worlds. And so in some cases, they may be coming to us essentially as kind of a person of color or that particular part of it too. But I think just like Deb noted, some folks may also be living with a disability too. And so they can bring various perspectives in the work that we do. And I would be very surprised if we did not encounter that as we engage with more older adults. And that's, I think, just to reflect that what happens to us later in life, sometimes we're in a tougher shop. I mean, that said, I think so as Jillian noted, from the public health side of things, we work a lot with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And the one group we work with uses what they call leading with race framework, with this idea that we're going to think about race explicitly, but not exclusively. And the idea that when we think about issues around equity and creating a more equitable society, we often know that essentially people of color have experienced the worst aspects of that. Having said that, there are a lot of other ways each of us, those in our lives, others we know, experience inequities as well too. And so I think it's moving and being inclusive in that particular way too. So it's a really important note. And thank you, Jillian, for that note to the bike and ped side of it as well too. But yeah, so anyway, just thank you for the chance to talk about this. You may not feel like you're doing this, but as residents of the town, it's just really exciting to be part of an effort that's trying to kind of build a stronger community, build a stronger kind of civic environment through work like this. And I think just like Jillian noted, there's other places around the country that will look at this and say, hey, we can do something different because it's happening here. And so that's really exciting to be part of that too. And so just thanks for the opportunity to work in and be part of the kind of community that you all have in Natick itself too. So thank you, Doug, Sarah. Thank you everyone else for a chance to join you today.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Barry, for joining us. And I know you have to drop off, but we'll probably continue on. I know I have at least one more question for Jillian, and I see Cindy's got her hand up. So Cindy,
I just want to say, Paul Carew is the liaison for the veterans, or the Veterans Office.
yeah,
And we work together. So he's also sent out some information on climate change over there at the Senior Center and Veterans. Remember, Paul?
yeah.
Can you unmute, Paul?
Yeah, yes, I have. I work a lot with disabilities. I've been on the Commission on Disabilities for now like 15 years working here in Natick, and about 10 years prior, when I first started here in Natick, so I've been involved for a long time, and of course I work a lot with disabled veterans, and I've worked with different people in Natick, Julian being one of them, on the trails and so forth. I try to get involved when I can and add what I can, and I love working with some of you folks in Natick, Julian and Deborah, and I love this Monday morning chat. This is great, so thank you.
Thanks, Polly. Cindy, you've been patient with your hand up.
Yeah, I just my mind is kind of whirring around here, and Jillian's comments and about the about folks feeling uncomfortable with with sort of the process, not feeling like they know enough to even participate, and the fact that, and Deb's comments about how once people learn what's involved and that they know that people are interested in hearing what they have to say, that people feel more engaged and are eager to share their opinions and so on, that this really has implications for the future of Natick's government, because there are these discussions about whether Natick should change from a town meeting to a representative, more sort of city, kind of, not a city, but that kind of a government. And so I'm fascinated, and just sort of thinking that it would be so great to have this group of folks who haven't really been involved, to have them be involved in this decision making moving forward about the future of Natick's government. And then a small comment, which is, I live very close to the Common, and that bus goes by, and there's a bus stop there, and you look in there, there's no schedule on the wall, and I don't have a smartphone, and so I hope that you all take into consideration, and I on purpose don't have a smartphone. I probably could, but it's just one more thing that I could lose or spend too much time with, And so I have a child. It's like don't have a TV. I've made a decision that I'm not going to have one. And so if there could be a schedule posted on the wall of the bus stop of when which buses go where with a map and so on, that would be really nice. And maybe I would take the bus. Usually I try to bicycle to Roche Brothers. I really try to avoid driving if it's within 2 miles, and but sometimes I might want to take the bus.
That's good feedback.
Thanks for sharing that. We have talked to the MWRTA, and we'd actually applied for a grant with them that we didn't get. That was in response to the feedback we got from the Climate Equity Project. But yeah, there's a lot to do on the transportation side for sure. So we'll share that feedback with Jim Nee is the name of the new director of that organization.
Okay, thanks.
Jillian, the question I wanted to ask you about is, I remember when Barry came to speak to us, the fall before last, and I heard that he was from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And then I realized that I had never even heard of this agency, but when I went to their website, they're huge. There's so many things that they're involved in. And you mentioned a few minutes ago that you were in the process of applying or have applied for a grant from another branch of them. This varies a little bit from our previous conversation, but can you give us like just a super quick overview? I would have asked Barry if he could have stayed on. What does this organization do, or what are the different ways that they're able to help towns such as ours?
I was about to make a really bad joke about like the Illuminati or something like that, but yeah, the MetroWest Area Planning Council, I think is what the C stands for, and MAPC. They're the regional planning agency. So each part of Massachusetts has a planning agency. There's like the Pioneer Valley Planning Agency, and we're in the MAPC region, which is the 101 cities and towns surrounding Boston, including Boston. And yeah, I work with all sorts of different groups within them. They have a transportation group, they have a clean energy and climate group, they have more of like a land use planning group within them, the health group that Barry's part of. They also have regionalization like experts, and they're like a quasi-government agency, maybe truly a government agency. They receive some funds from the state to do their efforts, but then they also receive funds from nonprofits. So they get a lot of funding from the, I believe it's the Bard Foundation. So they run a grant program they run several different grant programs, but one of them is using funding from that foundation to do climate resiliency projects. So just alone in Natick that I'm aware of, there's probably other groups that have worked with them, but they did this like Natick Center plan a few years back. But for myself and Claire Rondelli, we've been working with them on like a tool to make green infrastructure easier to like understand and plan for with our DPW. We've received several grants through the Accelerating Climate Resiliency Program. That's the Bard Foundation funding. So that helped us build the community garden behind the housing authority off of Cottage Street. The funding for the Planting the Future program, the like free tree program that I'm working on, that's separate from the street tree program. That's through that grant program. That it helped also fund the Tiny Forest project in front of the high school. And then we partner with them on a lot of projects like the climate equity work. We received a grant from the state, and we essentially hired MAPC to help us do that project. So they're able to be like funded through the state program that way, but they have expert planners and are like an agency you can work with to do projects like that. And then they also are working with us on our clean energy, our clean school bus project, which is with 23 different municipalities in our region. Like, how do we start planning for electric school buses, especially knowing that most of us don't own our own school buses, we contract them. So they just have tons of experience in
Get
planning.
ourselves
And
organized to the
Sorry, I'm not sure.
no,
who that was. Yeah,
that's
go ahead.
okay. They're planners who have like the great perspective of working across the region and can share examples from different communities across. So I have found them to be really great partners and super helpful.
Yeah. Wow, a wealth of resources.
Yeah.
I really like how this morning's discussion has kind of, it's, you know, started with what was going on with climate equity, but the communication strategy of how to reach those, you know, those populations, and how that really is important for every aspect of town business. Jillian, it's really great to hear how you're really trying to, you know, weave those lessons or strategies into everything else that we're doing. All right. Well, we can, I guess, bring things to a close. I just as a preview of things coming up, next week we're going to have a variety of folks speaking. I think it's the beginning in February of Black History Month, so we'll have multiple members from Natick for Black Lives Matter here talking about what that group is up to this year, and also maybe focusing on the Voting Rights Act. And then after that, we begin several sessions focusing on candidates running for town offices. The first one, we currently don't have any takers for, but there were 5 positions, I believe, that have folks in uncontested positions trying to fill those seats. We've invited any of them to come speak to us. So I'm not quite sure whether that will happen, but then after that, we'll move into the school committee candidates, where, Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 4 people running for 2 seats. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So each of those 4 followed by, well, we have 3 of them booked so far, and then followed by Linda, and I've forgotten how to Walschlager running for select board, which is uncontested, but certainly we would love to hear from her, and she'll be speaking to us as well. And Jillian's going to be back speaking to us about and she's still she's dropped off too. Is it right to call it the stretch building code? Is that's
yeah,
that's colloquial name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots to come.